Today was an important day for photographers, all camera lovers, all Nikon lovers, all photographers in general, because Nikon announced their mirrorless range of cameras. In 100 years of their existence, Nikon has achieved a lot of commendable things like sending a camera to the space and creating the first full-blown digital cameras, putting a video capability in the cameras and so on and so forth. But in the last 10 odd years, they've taken a backseat. They've kind of gone slow in coming up with newer products. Their best-selling product of today, the Nikon D850, according to me, is 8 months to a year too late into the market. But still, it did fantastic things. Now, today, this morning, like I said, they launched their new range of mirrorless cameras. According to Nikon, it's the beginning of the journey for the next 100 years. Okay, Nikon has launched two products. Z7 or the Z7 is a 45.7 megapixel camera, which Nikon called the Perfectionist. And the Z6, which is a 24.5 megapixel camera, is called as the all-rounder camera. 45.7 megapixel, I think, is very familiar. The sensor, I think, is currently in duty in the D850. It's tried and tested. I think it's exactly the same pixel. I personally use a D850. I've been using it for the last year, close to a year. And in fact, this is being filmed on a D850. The 24.5 megapixel camera, I have a D3X. This may not be the same sensor, but 24.5 megapixel is good enough for most purposes. So if you've been a DSLR user, which all Nikon users are till date, the biggest change would be a 493 on-sensor focus points for the Z7, a 273 focusing points, which again is on-sensor for the Z6. Both these cover almost 90% of the viewfinder, which means you cannot really miss a shot. Well, we've been so far working with 55 points, and I don't remember missing a shot for the lack of focus. But yes, of course, more the merrier. Then what next is the ISO. Well, ISO, of course, is in the predictable range. For the Z7, it's 64 to 25,600. I'm sure there is an expanded range. And for the Z6, it's 100 to 51,200. I don't remember myself going above, about 6,000 ISO? Yeah, I don't remember going anything above that. I'm sure people require that kind of high ISO values. But nevertheless, yes, it's there if you want to take it. So the Z7 offers 9 frames per second, 45.7 megapixel, raw shooting at 9 FPS, which is like the D850. And the Z6, which is a 24.5 megapixel camera, will offer you 12 FPS. Fantastic. Again, like I said, there are faster cameras available, but for a Nikon user, these are fantastic speeds. There are other advantages for the Nikon user. As we go along, we will know what they are. Nikon also has introduced a new processor, the X-Speed 6 in it. So I'm assuming that the processing will be faster, the video capabilities, the slow motion recording capabilities, all will be much faster. As you know, mirrorless cameras are way more compact in comparison to a DSLR. When you redesign everything into a small package, a lot of things get compromised. But looking at this design, I think what Nikon has managed to do is commendable. In fact, it seems like a reduction copy of a full-size DSLR. Almost all switches are exactly in the same place as they used to be in a full-size DSLR. The size and the shape and the touch and feel, I think even, is the same. When you hold a compact camera, especially with a long, heavy lens, what you need is a perfect grip, which they have managed to get. I think the grip is fantastic. The reverse lettering of the top dial seems to be perfect, and all other buttons and switches, like I said earlier, is in similar locations as compared to a full-size DSLR. By the way, Nikon has one of the most intuitive menu designs among cameras that I have seen. If you're looking for something, you will very naturally will reach there. You don't have to spend too much time hunting for a particular function in a Nikon menu. Fortunately and interestingly, Nikon has retained the same menu design concept even in the mirrorless cameras. Which is a definite plus point for all the Nikon users. And anyone who's migrating to a Nikon, they will very easily adapt to this new menu environment. Well, small doesn't mean that they are delicate. They are made with the same magnesium alloy material which they've used to make all their other DSLRs. And interestingly, they have managed to weatherproof it too. I think this weatherproofing is another big plus for the Nikon Mirrorless. Well, Nikon has introduced the new mount. They call it the Z mount. That doesn't mean that all lenses that you have gathered over a period of time is going to go to waste. They've also designed an adapter called the FTZ, probably F mount to Z mount adapter, which they are bundling along with the camera. So if you want to continue using your old lenses, you need an FTZ converter. All your autofocus functions and all your auto exposure functions and everything will continue to work with the old lenses. Well, Nikon is initially launching a set of 3 lenses to start with, a 35, a 50 and a 24-70. The 35 and the 50 are 1.8 lenses. They call the S series, and they all are nano coated, which means your contrast, your sharpness, your saturation, all going to be exactly the same as you've been getting from your G series lenses. The 24-70 is an S series again, is an f4 lens. The most interesting lens that I am looking forward to is the 58 Noct lens, the 0.95 lens. They've made use of the extra wide opening of the Z mount, and the 58mm is now available as 0.95, f.95. This is something which I am personally looking forward to. I don't think it's going to be cheap, but nevertheless worth looking forward. Another important feature which all Nikon users have been always wanting to have in their camera was in-camera image stabilization. Now here you have it, a 5-axis image stabilization built in the camera, which will amount to about 5 stops. Well, 5 stops if you're using a 24-70 f4 lens, which they have. We in Pixel Viilage use DSLRs for most of our videography. In fact, all of our videography. And we always look for small improvements in the video making capability of our Nikons. Nikon has been a little behind compared to other brands in the video department. I think with these new mirrorless, Nikon is going to fulfill that wish list too. First one is a full frame 4K UHD capability. Nikon claims that the video capability of this camera is unlike any other Nikon camera. The 4K is available at 10-bit 422, which is the first in Nikon cameras. Coupled with their hybrid AF system, which basically employs an on-sensor phase detection autofocus system, guarantees you smooth focus, noiseless focusing, and smooth follow focus, which all Nikon users have been crying for all this while. Super slow-mo adds that dope to your videos. Yes, of course, the Nikon D850 had 120 fps at full HD, but the mirrorless The Z7 and the Z6 is now promising 120 FPS at Full HD 2, which I am assuming that it is true 120 FPS, unlike the one which they had in the D850, which not exactly true slow motion. Last but not the least, for me, the foremost, Nikon has introduced N-Log in their new mirrorless cameras, which is fantastic news for the filmmaker. Well, of course, I can't wait to get this camera in my hand to shoot some footage in log profile. Of course, there are other features like a 3.6 million pixel EVF, a 2.1 million pixel touchscreen, which according to them is very color accurate, focus peaking and zebra stripes, all that is there. Of course, these are standard features which you can expect in almost all cameras these days. Well, and one big disadvantage with mirrorless cameras are power consumption. These cameras are extremely power hungry. They become very hot because there is very little mechanical parts inside. Everything is powered by the battery itself. Nikon has given the EN-EL15B along with this is what I understand, which is slightly more powerful than the EN-EL15A. Well, with the battery, they claim that both cameras, both the Z7 and the Z6, weighs 585 grams. The Z7 and the Z6 both look, feel, and even weighs similar, almost like a Siamese twin. Well, there is nothing called a perfect camera. I don't know if there was a perfect camera ever. If you look at it, you will find some fault or the other in every camera. And if you need to find one like that in the Nikon mirrorless, it is the fact that they've given only one memory card slot. But to me, it's a minor fault which you will comfortably overcome. The Z7 apparently is going to be available on the 27th of September, and the Z6 is going to be available towards the end of November. Well, at this point, we can't do nothing else but to dream and wait for that day to happen. Of course, find that money too. Bye for now.